for the children since 1999. And I will be joined today by Lois Maluki, who is our program officer, and Lucky Mahenzo, who is our child protection officer. And we're going to talk specifically about livelihoods and economic stability for the carers of children with disabilities. A lot of times children with disabilities are overlooked in some of these discussions because we talk so much about engaging people with disabilities in our solutions, but we forget that a very young child can't necessarily be engaged. And so really calling on their caregivers is something that we need to think about when we want to reduce poverty and increase their access to services and income. So just a little bit of background about our organization so you know where this work is coming from. As I mentioned, we've been partnering since 1999. We serve more than 70,000 children with disabilities per year. All of our innovations are tested in Kilifi, Kenya. So that's, you'll be hearing quite a few case studies from Kilifi in this presentation. But our work is also used by 35 partners in 16 different countries around the world. They access our materials through presentations like this and also through our free online library of resources for disability advocacy and inclusion. Our mission is to transform harmful beliefs surrounding disability to those that improve children's lives. So we're really looking more at stigma and discrimination than the social model of disability justice, as opposed to solely looking at the medical needs. And as you'll hear during the presentation, a large component of our work, really kind of the bread and butter of what we do, is a local leader engagement program where we train influential community leaders, such as pastors, traditional healers, Muslim leaders, government officials, and parents of children with disabilities to advocate for these children and to support their access to medical care and education, and really their inclusion in the community and home. So today's presentation will just involve these 5 sections. I'll talk a little bit about the challenges and share a study with you from South Africa. Mahenzo is then going to talk about our solutions and interventions, kind of the approaches behind those. And then Lois will share a number of case studies about people whose lives have been changed as a result of these interventions. And then we'll have a few minutes for Q&A at the end. So first, a little bit about the challenges. Children who are born into families, children with disabilities, their families are often suffer just as much stigma and discrimination as they do. Mothers are often blamed for their children's disabilities. They're seen as sinful, as cursed, as having suffered some type of witchcraft. I sat in a workshop where a man said, he stood up and said, "This has been so helpful because I thought I had to beat my wife to teach her not to have more children with disabilities," not fully understanding the medical causes of these disabilities. And so these spiritual beliefs color a lot of the ways that the whole families are treated once a child with a disability is born. Many of these the birth mothers are abandoned by their husbands as well as their relatives and friends and left completely on their own to care for these children. And they do, in many families, hide the children in an effort to keep them safe in many cases from abuse, both very high rates of physical and sexual abuse of these children, as well as just being ostracized and criticized by people in the community. So in some cases, these children are hidden their entire lives. And of course, the burden of this care for the children without these support structures in place makes it very challenging for their caregivers to find time and energy to work and earn an income to support their families. There are high rates of anxiety and depression among caregivers of children with disabilities, especially those in low and middle income countries. Divorce rates are also high. They're afraid to leave the child with others, again, for this risk of abuse and discrimination. Employers often won't hire people with disabilities, even if parents of children with disabilities, even if they do have time or inclination to work. And the study I'm about to show you will really highlight the fact that there's extremely high costs for many of these children with disabilities, as well as limited time for the caregivers to work in the first place. So this study was conducted by a group called Shonaquip in South Africa in 2020. They looked at 249 families with children with disabilities, and they asked them if they were working. And as you can see from this chart, About 8% of them were working part-time, but 43% of them said they couldn't work at all because they had to care for their child with a disability. And 34% said they weren't working and didn't provide a reason. So you're looking at 85% of these families who were not working or were only able to work part-time. And part of the reasons for this that came out in this research was the incredibly high cost of caring for children with disabilities compared to children without. On the left side of this infographic, you can see what it would cost to care for a child without a disability in South Africa. On the right side, you see the child with a disability almost twice as expensive for clinic visits, 3 times for transportation, increased school fees, in addition to the therapy, the equipment, the special food, modifications to the home, and all of these physical expenses on top of the psychological burden of care for these children. Another part of the study showed the comparison of children with mobility challenges as opposed to different types of disabilities. So if you have a child with a disability that's a mobility challenge, you're looking at almost 7 to 8 times the expenses of a child without a disability. But even if they don't have a mobility challenge, you're looking at over 5 times as much expenses. And so this really sets up these families to be challenged emotionally and financially, and to really, most of them to end up in situations where they're struggling to put food on the table and they're living in poverty for most of the child's lives. So I'm going to pass this over to Mahenzo now to talk about some of the solutions that we've come up with to help these families cope.
Thank you for this opportunity. I will be taking us through the solutions or interventions we've put through to address these challenges. To start us off, I would like us to watch a video which will be giving us a brief of how our local leader engagement has been working to address these challenges.
Billion people have a disability. More than half are children. While high-income countries have more wealth to support people with special needs, 4 out of 5 people with disabilities live in low or middle-income countries where there are far fewer resources. 90% lack access to education. A staggering 83% are abused. Most experience discrimination. Providing items like wheelchairs can help some, but to support children long-term, we must address the root cause of these problems: false and harmful beliefs about disability. This is especially challenging in low-income countries where many believe disabilities are caused by witchcraft, demons, curses, or sin. As a result, families often turn to religious and traditional leaders who believe in these superstitious causes to heal the disability. This leads many children to undergo harmful healing rituals that do not cure them. In response, Kupenda invites these leaders to one-day disability advocacy trainings, where they interact with people with disabilities and acquire knowledge and skills to become advocates for people with disabilities. On average, 7 out of 10 participants in these trainings report using what they've learned to accept, support, and empower people with disabilities in their communities. On average, each of these participants supports 24 children with disabilities every year through counseling and referrals for medical care and education. And these leaders continue to help more children in their communities year after year. As we partner with more organizations to replicate this advocacy model, we are improving the lives of thousands of children and millions in years to come. Every day, children with disabilities are born into dangerous situations. But every day, Kupenda transforms harmful beliefs surrounding disability to those that improve children's lives. Together, we can put an end to harmful stigma and practices and create a more inclusive world for more than 1 billion people with disabilities. Join us.
Okay, thank you. To start us off with the solutions or the interventions, we've seen from the video we've watched, we engage local leaders in a one-day workshop, and we have earlier been told we engage pastors, traditional healers, Muslim leaders, and also government leaders into these trainings. And we educate them on the rights and care for children with disabilities, including the true causes of these disabilities. After these workshops, they go back to their communities and they do a lot of sensitization. That in turn, we are able to eradicate the harmful cultural beliefs, including stigma and discrimination. After which our local leaders identify families of children with disabilities and they offer family counseling. What we have seen with these counselings, they are able to be counseled depending on their needs. Let's say there is a need of a child enrolled in school or one who needs a medical support. They are usually getting these referrals to schools for therapy and also areas where they can get assistive devices. And we've seen that when children are sent to school, parents find time to be able to work. As we've seen earlier, the burden of care is usually placed on these parents. And when we are able to give therapy and improve the disabilities of these children and also get them assistive devices, we are able also to create or increase their independence and create more time for these parents. We have also seen that through these workshops, we are able to reunify families after we explain to them the true causes of the disabilities. As we've seen earlier, that usually parents blame one another to be the cause of these disabilities. But when we educate them on the real causes, we are able to reunify these parents, especially the mother and the father, and thus we are able to increase support for the family and also for the children. Kindly, we can move to the next slide. Through the local leaders, they are able to form parent support groups locally in the community they are coming from. And we've seen that these parent support groups, they're able to do income generating activities. They do merry-go-rounds and also table banking, which enables them to be able to meet their day-to-day needs together with those of their children. We've also seen that these groups are also registered with the Social Services Department in Kenya. They are issued with a certificate, which certificate enables them to be able to ask for funding from microfinancing banks like the Kenya Women Microfinance Bank in Kenya. We've also seen that through this, the certificate, they're able to ask for funding also from the National Council for Persons with Disabilities here in Kenya, and also to obtain insurance for their children. We've also seen that through these groups, they can also lobby for the change of policies and also lobby for services for their children. Thank you so much. Again, on the issues of disability policies, like I had earlier said, parents are able to rally together through these groups or are in charge of making these policies to lobby for the enactment or also for the implementation of these policies. And we've seen that we've been able in Kilifi County where we work. Also part for services, for example, they are able to ask the government to build school near their villages for their children. This has also seen parents being able to ask the government to also bring locally to their nearest hospital a physiotherapist or occupational therapist who are able to provide these services to their children. Thank you. I will pass to my colleague.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'll be taking you through the case studies. Please, let's move to the next slide. As my colleague has said, this is one of our disability advocates, a pastor who is sensitizing members of the community on the contents of the Kilifi County Disability Bill, and also has gone further even to offer his church as a free venue for the public participation of the Kilifi County Disability Bill. Thank you. Let's move to the next slide. A parent of a child with disability, Valentine's mother, who was abandoned by her husband just because she gave birth to a child with cerebral palsy. So after counseling Valentine's mother, she later enrolled the child at a nearby school, whereby the child was able to access therapy services. And with time, there was improvement on the child's disability. Initially, the child wouldn't even sit, wouldn't even roll over, but today the child can sit with little support. She can also roll over, crawl from one place to another. And this has brought a lot of Reunification with his father, because initially the father was blaming the mother that is the cause of that disability. But we engaged the father through a counseling session, taking him through so that he can narrate the birth, the pregnancy and the birth history of the child, and later realize that it is not the mother that caused the child disability, but it was because of the prolonged labor. And from that day up to now, he rejoined his wife, and they are living together as a family, meaning much support for the child is being provided. Thank you. Let's move to the next slide. This is one of the example of the parent support groups that our community leaders or local leaders have formed in their communities. This is Kupenda Parent Support Group. They usually meet on a weekly basis, whereby they give each other emotional support. Apart from that, they also make liquid soap for income generating, and also they actually give basic therapy skills to their children after them being trained by one of our occupational therapists. Apart from that, some of the members are connected or linked to the local microfinance, whereby they are able to access loans and also boost their small businesses, meaning that they are now being able to, they are able now to provide for their family or to cater for their children's needs. Apart from that, they have been also advocates in their community. They are actually creating awareness on the rights of children with disability through singing. Thank you. Let's move to the next slide. This is one of the schools that was started by community leaders, that is the pastors, the chiefs, and even parents themselves. After we did disability advocacy training for these community leaders, they went further to their communities and identified children with disabilities. But again, they realized that there were so many children, but there were no schools to take these children. And that's how the community came together to donate land. And when they donated this land, now they were able actually to push the government and even other donors to construct a school. Today we have this school which is serving more children with cerebral palsy and those with visual impairments. Apart from that, the children in the school, they are able to access therapy services on a daily basis or week basis. They are also able to get the nutrition and medication, and their parents are free now. They can work and contribute to their communities. Thank you. Let's move to the next slide, please. This is one of the pastors that we have trained, and he's now a disability advocate in his community. He's actually giving a disability sermon on inclusion in his church. And also apart from that, he also formed a parent support group in his community. And the parents or the caregivers of children with disabilities in that community were undergoing a lot of frustration because they had to travel long distance to go and access therapy. So what they did, they actually asked for those services to be taken to the community where they are easily accessible. So full time, whereby they can take children for therapy services. Thank you. Let's move to the next slide. These are also our disability advocates. They are traditional healers. Each one of them, they have gone back after the training. They went back to their communities. They are able to sensitize their communities on the rights of children with disabilities. They are able to counsel and refer families for services. And also they connect the parent support groups, or they assist them to apply for government grants, and also connect the parent support groups with the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, whereby they can access cash transfers. Apart from that, they have continued to give public talks on rights of children with disability. They have continued to give public talks or educate the public or their communities on why we should care for children with disabilities. Thank you. Let's move to the next slide. Thank you very much for.
Thank you, Lois and Mahenzo. We got through our presentation a little faster than we had planned. Sorry, Sean, if we were speaking too quickly. And we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about this presentation or this work. Lango, I see you have a question.
Lango, can you unmute, please, if you're able? Lango, can we ask you to unmute? We can't hear your question. Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you so very much. Yeah, thank you. I'm Lango Sinkamba from Zambia. I'm a disability advocate, disability and development consultant from Zambia. I am a Paralympian and very much vested most of my interest in disability issues. Yes, we have seen a big number of marriage breaking due to having a disabled child in a family. Now, from the present, I would like to find out, is there any targeted initiatives to couples to counsel them so that we reduce this number of marriages getting broken because of having a disabled child in a family? Because the numbers so far, they're not reducing, but they've kept on rising. So is there anything that we are missing, we advocates or organization of people with disabilities, that we have missed this target of lower divorcees in our countries? Thank you.
Speak a little bit about family reunification, but I think this question of prevention. Mahenzo, would you share a little bit about what we do to prevent the divorce in the first place?
What we do, I think, because the divorce comes by, is caused by the misconceptions surrounding the causes of disability. So what we do, we sensitize the community on the true causes or the medical causes of disabilities or different disabilities. By doing so, these parents get to understand that it is not the curses, it is not the genies, it's not witchcraft, so demons and all that. So with that understanding, it changes the mindset of these parents, and actually they are able to love and accept the child. Another thing, we do family counseling. We don't just do one-on-one counseling. Sometimes we pay home visits to the family of this child. So we engage all the family members, and we start talking about okay, we start talking about the rights of this child. And remember, even if the father was like negative, there comes in a family member who stands very positive and is able actually to convince the other members to accept the child. And at the end, you see that we will find out that this child is included in that family and reduces the divorce rate or the separation between those parents.
Just to add a little on that, I guess we tend to look at the root cause of why we have such instances of parents blaming one another. There are these misconceptions that we carry from our childhood that have been impacted in us from generation to generation. What we try to do is to sit with these families and also the community, try to eradicate whatever they believe is the cause of the disability by telling them the scientific or proven causes of disability. And when they get that understanding and they leave whatever they came with to the workshops or what they have been made to believe by the ancestors, it becomes much better for parents to be able to accept their children and also to end the issues of them divorcing because of a child with a disability.
Thanks, Mahenzo and Lois. I'll just to demonstrate what you've shared, I'll also just show this image. We have a disability guidebook that outlines the 31 most common disabilities in low and middle income countries. And it basically involves a 2-page summary with a lot of graphics for low literacy populations to help them understand the causes and treatments for different disabilities. This book is distributed during our trainings and by our leaders to help people understand their children's specific disabilities. This is also something accessible through our online library. So I just wanted to share that. And there is a question here as well. Is the project networked with National Caregiver Alliance, if there is any? Lois and Mahenzo, do you know if there is a National Caregiver Alliance in Kenya?
No, just partner with the National Council for Persons with Disability and the county government and the national government, and also different NGOs.
Yeah, and Disha, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. This is actually a part of our guidebook. So for each of our workshops, including our parents' workshop, we have kind of a preliminary steps that the facilitator and the host should take before starting that workshop. And one of them is to investigate which services and networks are available in their community so that it can be part of the referral guide that they distribute during that training. So that is very important to make sure that after the training, the caregivers have resources and networks they can connect with for support. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions? Do you provide any support to mothers with children with psychopalsy for their daily?
Hello? My hands is up.
Is that Gideon?
Hello, my hand is up.
No, it's Lango again, Jessica.
Okay, sorry. Okay, Lango.
Yeah, I just want to also find from my colleagues, we have seen the situation here is that, yes, the disability people's organization are doing so much with the support from partners from outside other countries, apart from our own governments. Our governments, yes, they're quick to pass legislation, but when it comes to implementation, actually, when you go on the ground, you find that there's nothing which is being implemented, and they're leaving everything to the hands of disabled people's organization to spearhead or to market the legislation change. Is it the same with the colleagues in Kenya, where the participation of government is very minimal as compared to the participation of the NGOs? Thank you.
Go ahead, Lois and Mahenzo.
Yes, we can say we are facing similar challenges. However, we have tried to come up with let me say it's like a radical approach, because when we wait for the government to implement or do whatever they had promised to do for children or other persons with disabilities, we will continue to face similar problem. But however, I will give an example of an incident that we did. Like for the school we've been told about that was started by the parents. Usually the government is not quick to start anything. But however, when an NGO starts something, it will be quick to come to that school or whatever thing you would have started to give support. So they will end up owning everything. For example, the school, it started with a teacher employed by the organization. But as at now, the national government sent one teacher, the county government has also sent 2 teachers. So what I can say is organizations that are working for persons with disabilities should not see as if their efforts are very little, no. But whenever you start something, that's when now the government realizes that, oh no, we are not doing what is just for our people. So I will encourage us, those who are working in low-income countries, that when you as an organization, you are able to do something, start it with the little you have. And I'm sure the government at some point will come and hold the project. And it will be seen as if it was started by the government, but at least you would have done something. Thank you.
Thanks, Mahenzo and Lois. I also put a link in the chat to our online library of training materials. We do have a training for government leaders, and this year we're also developing one for village elders. I just wanted to give, if we have the last minute, Gideon, I think that your question was about psychosocial support for care for mothers of children. Is that right? Just to say that we do provide counseling for families, both our staff in the ground and also local leaders who check in with the families every 6 months to do an assessment of their needs and refer them to services. If they're in emergency needs, we also attend to those through our staff on the ground and through certain child protection centers who we liaise with. So thank you all so much for this opportunity.